"Can I sit with you?" she whispered, never knowing the man across from her had already been ordered to betray her. Rain crawled down the library windows as Nora Whitmore lowered herself into the only empty chair. She was just a tired nursing student with overdue bills, a dead mother, and no one left to call when life became too heavy. But the quiet stranger watching every exit knew something she didn't. The armed men near the bookshelves were not following him. They were protecting her. And somewhere across Philadelphia, a Mafia king had just learned that the daughter he had hidden for 21 years was no longer a secret. Stay with this story because every lie, every sacrifice, and every dangerous choice will reveal what love costs when blood decides your fate. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. The armed men near the bookshelves were not following Adrian. They were protecting Nora. And as she bent over her nursing textbook, tracing a diagram of the human heart with the end of her pen, Adrian watched the reflection of the library doors in the dark glass and understood that the quiet young woman across from him had just become the most dangerous secret in Philadelphia. Nora noticed his silence. "You always watch doors when you are nervous. I am not nervous. You checked that one 7 times. She smiled as if the lie were harmless. Outside rain pressed silver lines against the glass. The library smelled of dust-wet wool and burnt coffee. "You know most people pretend to read when they do not want to talk," Nora said. "I am pretending very well. You have been on the copyright page since I sat down." Something almost warm moved across his face. Then her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and the humor left her eyes. "I have to take this." She stepped toward the windows, lowering her voice as she answered. Adrian waited until she was out of earshot, then turned his phone over. The message from Derek Shaw still burned on the screen. "Confirm the girl. Kane believes she belongs to Vale." Adrian typed 2 words. "Need proof." The answer came almost at once. Photo attached. A second image showed a younger woman with Nora's eyes standing beside Sebastian Vale outside a private clinic. She was pregnant and his hand rested at the small of her back. Adrian had seen Vale twice, always surrounded by men who would kill before asking why. He spoke quietly, forcing dangerous people to lean closer. Adrian looked from the photograph to Nora. She stood near the glass, one hand pressed against her forehead. "Yes, I understand," she said into the phone. "I know the payment is late. I can cover half on Friday." A pause. "No, I do not have anyone else you can call." Another pause. "My mother passed away." Her voice changed on the last word. It did not break. It simply became smaller. Adrian looked back at the photograph. Derek sent another message. "Russell wants you close. Learn everything." Adrian deleted the conversation before Nora returned. She sat down and placed her phone face down. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Perfect. I am rich-rested and 1 bad grade from becoming a professional coffee drinker. You hide honest answers inside jokes." Her expression shifted. "And you notice too much for someone trapped on the copyright page. Maybe I am studying people. That sounds worse." "It usually is." Near the reference shelves, the younger guard touched his ear and moved toward the exit. Caleb Ward remained behind, pretending to examine a row of legal volumes. His eyes met Adrian's in the window. The warning was clear. "Stay away from her." Adrian looked back at Nora. She had already returned to her notes. He should have stood up. He should have left the library, called Derek, and given Russell Kane exactly what he wanted. A schedule, a pattern, a weakness. Instead, he stayed until Nora finished studying. At 11:40, the library lights flickered to signal closing. Nora gathered her books and shoved them into a canvas bag that looked too worn to carry another semester. Adrian rose. "I will walk you out." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you always escort strangers through public buildings? Only the suspicious ones? You are the one watching doors, and you are the one carrying a textbook heavy enough to hide a body." That is anatomy, same difference. They reached the rain-slick steps. Nora opened her broken umbrella and one side folded inward. That is not an umbrella, Adrian said. It is doing its best. He held his coat over her head before she could argue. Nora stared at him. You will get soaked. I have survived rain. That sounded strangely dramatic. Everything sounds dramatic after midnight. They crossed the courtyard beneath the coat. Adrian kept his eyes on the street. Caleb's gray sedan waited across from the gates. Half a block behind it sat another vehicle. Kane's people. Nora followed his gaze. You know them? No. You answered too fast. So did you. A bus groaned to a stop at the curb. Nora reached for the door, then turned back. Thank you for the chair. Adrian handed her the ruined umbrella. You asked. She smiled. Most people say no. The bus doors closed. Caleb's sedan followed at a distance, and Kane's vehicle followed Caleb. Adrian stood in the rain until all three disappeared. By morning, Nora's small apartment above a closed bakery smelled of coffee and old cinnamon. Books covered the kitchen table. Unopened envelopes formed a stack beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. Wearing hospital scrubs, she opened the refrigerator, saw half a carton of eggs and leftover soup, and chose coffee. On the counter beside the machine sat her mother's old phone. Nora knew she should have canceled the service months ago. She had told herself she kept it because hospital billing offices still used the number. That was easier than admitting she sometimes called the voicemail just to hear Helen breathe before speaking. She pressed play. Her mother's voice filled the kitchen. You do not have to save everyone, sweetheart. Some people have to decide they want saving. There was laughter in the background, a television, the soft clatter of dishes. Then Helen said, And do not forget to eat. Coffee is not breakfast, no matter what nursing school tells you. Nora stopped the message before the final goodbye. A final notice slid beneath the apartment door. Nora turned it over with her foot as the care facility called, asking her to cover another shift. I have clinical until 5. We are short. She looked at the bills. I will be there. Across the city, Adrian's morning began beneath a boxing gym in Kensington. The basement had no windows. Fluorescent lights hummed above a metal table stacked with cash. Adrian counted bills while Derek Shaw paced behind him. Derek Shaw wore a tailored blue suit and the smile of a man who enjoyed making others uneasy. You stayed with her 2 hours, he said. She was studying. And you also studying. Derek glanced at the economics book beside the money. I know your talents, Cole. Reading is not one of them. Derek leaned over the table and placed Nora's photograph on top of a stack of 20s. In the image, she was looking down, unaware she had been photographed. She likes you, Derek said. She asked for a chair. Women have started wars for less. Adrian finished one bundle and wrapped it with a paper band. What does Russell want? For now, information. About a nursing student. About Sebastian Vale's nursing student. Adrian's hands stopped for half a second. Derek noticed. You knew. I suspected. From what? Caleb Ward was in the library. Derek's smile faded, watching her, protecting her. Derek paced beneath the muffled rhythm of gloves striking heavy bags upstairs. Vale buried her well. No photographs, no records tied to him. Then how did we find her? Detective Price found a sealed clinic file. Russell paid enough to make a dead record breathe. Adrian resumed counting. Derek leaned against the table. Get close. Find out where she works, where she sleeps, who she calls when she is scared. What if she does not scare easily? Everyone scares easily. You just need the right knife. Adrian's eyes lifted. Derek smiled again. Figure of speech. No, it was not. For several seconds, neither man moved. Then Derek tapped the photograph. Do your job, Cole. Adrian slid the photograph back toward him. I do not need it. Derek left it there anyway. At noon, a black sedan waited across from Nora's apartment. Caleb watched her emerge in scrubs beneath a dark coat. A delivery truck blocked his view for 3 seconds, and his hand went to the door before Nora appeared again. The younger guard beside him said, "She looks like Helen. Do not say that to Sebastian." "Why?" "Because he knows." Tommy glanced at him. "You think Kane knows?" "Kane does not place 2 cars near a university because he likes architecture." Caleb dialed a number from memory. Sebastian Vale answered on the first ring. "Talk." They found her. Silence. It was not the silence of surprise. Sebastian had lived too long to be surprised. It was the silence of a man measuring how much violence could fit inside one breath. "Move her," he said. "Where the house in Vermont?" "She will not go." "Then do not ask." Caleb watched Nora board the bus. "Helen made us promise. Helen made me promise Nora would have a life. She does." "No, she has a target on her back and no idea why." Caleb lowered his voice. "If we take her now, she will know." Sebastian looked out from his office over the Delaware River. Barges moved slowly beneath the morning haze. From 30 floors above, the city appeared quiet enough to forgive. "Then make sure she survives long enough to hate me," he said. The call ended. That evening, Nora returned to the library carrying 2 coffees. Adrian was already at the same table. The chair opposite him was empty. His backpack sat on the floor. Nora stopped beside the table. "You are expecting someone?" "Apparently." She set 1 coffee in front of him. "I guessed black." "You guessed right. That is unfortunate. I was hoping you had one cheerful quality." She sat down. Adrian watched her remove 3 notebooks, a packet of crackers, and a stethoscope from her bag. "You carry that everywhere, the stethoscope, the entire hospital. Preparedness is attractive, so I have heard." She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Was that flirting?" "No." "Good. You are bad at it." They studied in silence for several minutes. This time, Adrian opened the book to an actual chapter. Nora noticed. "Progress. I found the table of contents. I am proud of you." He almost smiled again. A few seats away, Caleb watched from behind a newspaper. Adrian ignored him. Nora pressed 2 fingers to his wrist. "That is your radial pulse. It tells me your heart is working. Useful information. It also says you are not as calm as you pretend. Maybe your method is flawed. Maybe you are." She released him, suddenly aware of their closeness. A little color rose into her cheeks. She looked back at her notes. Adrian looked toward the window. Caleb was no longer reading the newspaper. Over the next 3 weeks, Nora kept choosing the chair across from Adrian. Soon he arrived early, and she brought 2 coffees. At a cafe, she tried to teach him how to pronounce sphygmomanometer. He said it wrong until she laughed. "You can say reconnaissance," she accused. "Different skill set." "You admitted you have a skill set." I admitted nothing. At the library, half his sandwich began appearing beside her textbook whenever she skipped dinner. "This is terrible," she said, taking another bite. "You are still eating it. I am preventing food waste." At the student clinic, Nora found him sitting on an examination table with blood across his knuckles. "What happened?" "I fell." She pulled on gloves. "Into someone's teeth." "Something like that." She cleaned the cut. Adrian did not react when the antiseptic touched broken skin. Nora examined an older scar across his palm. This was not from a fall. No. Work accident. No. You enjoy making conversation difficult. I enjoy accurate answers. You barely give answers. They are still accurate. Her fingers were careful around the wound. Adrian looked away. Pain had always made sense to him. Tenderness did not. Later that week, they walked along the Delaware River after Nora's shift. The city lights trembled across the dark water. A cold wind moved between the warehouses. Nora wrapped both hands around a cup of tea. "My mother used to bring me here," she said. Whenever she was worried about money, she wanted to look at something bigger than the problem. Did it help? No. But we got pretzels. Adrian looked toward the river. What was she like? Nora smiled without happiness. She could walk into a room where everyone was panicking and make them breathe slower. She remembered birthdays. She hated roses because my father supposedly gave them to her once, then disappeared. Supposedly, she did not talk about him. What did she tell you, that he died before I was born? Adrian's jaw tightened. Nora noticed. What? Nothing. You do that too. Do what hide? An honest answer inside silence. They walked several steps. Then Nora said, "What about you?" "What about me?" "Your family." "My sister lives in Baltimore." "Parents gone." "I am sorry." "Do not be. They were gone before they died." She did not push. That made him want to tell her more. "I joined the Marines at 18, he said. Nora looked at him. That explains the parking garage. It explains some things. And the rest? The rest is why I do not talk about it. She nodded. After a while, she said, "You look at every door like it owes you an explanation." Adrian glanced at her. Doors are easier than people. They only hide one thing. Nora's smile faded. "You really believe that I have evidence?" She stopped walking. "So do I." For one quiet second, they faced each other beneath the bridge lights. Adrian wanted to kiss her. Instead, he looked past her shoulder. The gray sedan was parked across the street. Nora followed his eyes. "I have seen that car before." Adrian felt something cold settle beneath his ribs. "Where? Outside my apartment. Near the care facility. Yesterday by campus. You are sure I remember the dent above the back wheel?" He had noticed the car because it belonged to Caleb. Nora had noticed the dent. "Maybe someone works nearby," he said. "At all three places could be coincidence. You do not believe in coincidence." "No." "Then do not insult me with one." The next afternoon, Adrian followed Caleb into the university parking garage. Caleb stopped beside a concrete pillar without turning around. "You are getting careless," he said. "You are getting visible." Caleb faced him. Up close, he looked older than the stories. Gray threaded his hair. A pale scar crossed his chin. "You work for Russell Kane," Caleb said. "That makes you poison." Adrian stepped closer. "Then why has your boss left her unprotected enough to sit beside Poison?" "She is protected. Kane has photographs, records, and men outside her building." Caleb's face remained still, but the muscle in his jaw tightened. "How much does he know?" "Enough to want more." "And you?" Adrian did not answer. Caleb lowered his voice. "Stay away from her. If I disappear, Kane replaces me with someone who will not warn you. You think this is a warning? I think you have spent 21 years pretending distance is protection." Caleb's hand moved beneath his coat. Adrian did not flinch. "Careful," Caleb said. "Tell Vale the same thing." They stood in the cold concrete silence until footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Caleb walked away first. That night, Nora worked late at the care facility. From across the street, Adrian watched the light in the second-floor window. A Kane vehicle was parked behind him. His phone rang. "Derek, your people are too close," Adrian said. "They are making sure you remember who you belong to. Move them. You do not give orders. Adrian looked up. Through the window, Nora was helping an elderly woman back into bed. She adjusted the blanket, then sat beside her for a moment, listening as the woman spoke. Derek continued. Russell is satisfied. Tomorrow he wants you at the club. For what? To hear how you are going to deliver the girl. The line went dead. Adrian remained inside the car, staring at Nora through the rain-streaked glass. She turned off the room light and disappeared into the hallway. A moment later, the front doors opened. Nora stepped outside alone. She saw Adrian's car and smiled before she could stop herself. He should have driven away. Instead, he unlocked the passenger door. Nora climbed in and brushed rain from her sleeves. What are you doing here? Adrian looked at her, at the woman who still believed he had come because he cared whether she made it home safely. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I was in the neighborhood. Nora glanced at the dark warehouses, the empty street, and the locked businesses. That is a terrible lie. Adrian started the engine. This time, he did not disagree. Adrian drove Nora home through streets glazed with rain. The windshield wipers moved in a slow, tired rhythm. Every red light painted her face in brief flashes of color, then released her back into shadow. She sat angled toward the window, watching closed storefronts and empty bus stops pass. You were not in the neighborhood, she said. Adrian kept his eyes on the road. No. Were you following me? No. That answer took too long. I was making sure you got home. Why? The question sounded simple. It was not. Adrian turned onto her street. The gray sedan that belonged to Caleb was gone, but a black SUV waited near the corner with its lights off. Kane's men. He drove past Nora's building. She looked over. You missed it. I saw a truck blocking the entrance. There was no truck. Adrian continued for another block, checking the mirror. The SUV pulled away from the curb. It followed. Nora noticed the change in his expression. What is it? Nothing. You keep saying that when something is clearly happening. Adrian made 2 quick turns. The SUV stayed behind them. Nora twisted in her seat. Is that car following us? Put on your seatbelt. I am wearing it. Pull it tighter. Her breath caught. Adrian drove toward a busier avenue where restaurants were still open and people crowded beneath awnings. The SUV slowed, then continued straight as Adrian turned. He watched it disappear in the mirror. Nora stared at him. You knew what that someone was behind us. I saw a car. You changed streets 3 times. Traffic. At midnight, he pulled up beside her building. Rain tapped against the roof. Nora did not reach for the door. Adrian, who are you? The truth pressed against his ribs. He could have told her then. He could have said Russell Kane's name. He could have explained the photograph, the sealed records, the armed men, and the father she believed was dead. Instead, he looked toward the dark windows above the bakery. I am someone who does not want you getting hurt. Her expression hardened. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have tonight. Nora opened the door. Before stepping out, she looked back at him. Honest people do not speak like that. Adrian watched her run through the rain and disappear into the building. Only after the upstairs light came on did he drive away. The next afternoon, Russell Kane's private club was nearly empty. It occupied the 2nd floor of an old hotel near Rittenhouse Square. The windows were covered by heavy curtains. Dark wood lined the walls. A pianist played in the corner for an audience of no one. Adrian entered without surrendering his weapon. 2 guards watched him cross the room but did not stop him. Russell Kane sat alone at a round table beneath a brass lamp. He was in his late 50s, broad through the shoulders with silver hair and the calm expression of a man who had never needed to raise his voice twice. A cup of coffee sat untouched in front of him. "Sit," Kane said. Adrian remained standing. Kane glanced at the empty chair. "Still pretending you have choices?" Adrian sat. Derek Shaw moved into the room and closed the door behind him. Kane placed a photograph on the table. Nora was leaving the care facility. Her face was turned away from the camera. "You have done well," Kane said. "I have done nothing. You made her trust you. She asked for a chair. And now she gets into your car." Adrian said nothing. Kane opened a folder. Inside were copies of Nora's class schedule, work shifts, bank statements, and phone records. Someone had circled the time she was alone. "You will bring her to Penn's Landing tomorrow morning," Kane said. "Before sunrise." Adrian looked at the folder. "Why there quiet streets? Easy river access. Fewer cameras than people believe. And then Derek's men take her." Adrian's gaze shifted to Derek. Derek smiled. Kane continued. "You tell her you found proof about the men following her. You say it is too dangerous to discuss by phone. She meets you because she wants answers. What happens after they take her?" Kane folded his hands. "Sebastian Vale receives a call. What do you want from him?" Kane stood and walked toward a large map mounted on the wall. Blue lines marked shipping routes along the Delaware River. Red pins covered warehouses, customs offices, freight yards, and storage facilities. "Pier 9, he said. "The refrigerated cargo lanes. The customs men Vale owns. Every truck that enters this city after midnight without being searched." He tapped the river with one finger. "Vale has controlled the water for 20 years. He made men ask permission to move through their own city. You want the ports. I want the city to remember it belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it." Adrian looked at Nora's photograph again. "What if Vale refuses?" Kane returned to the table. "He will not. You are sure. A man can lose money and call it business. He can lose soldiers and call it war. A daughter is different." Kane sat across from him. "He hid her because she is the one thing he cannot replace, and when he gives you the river," Kane's smile was small, "then we decide whether keeping her alive still has value." Adrian's hand closed beneath the table. Derek saw the movement. "So emotional," Derek said. "The Marine finds a conscience." Kane did not look away from Adrian. "You have wanted out for years." Adrian said nothing. Kane opened a second folder. Inside was a photograph of a woman standing outside an elementary school in Baltimore. She held the hand of a little boy in a yellow raincoat. Adrian stopped breathing. His sister Emily. His nephew Noah. The photograph had been taken that morning. Kane pushed it across the table. "Deliver Nora Whitmore, and you receive $500,000, a clean passport, and permission to leave Philadelphia." Adrian stared at the image. "And if I refuse?" Kane picked up his coffee. "Emily has made a peaceful life. It would be cruel to disturb it." Adrian looked up. "Leave her out of this." "I did. For 6 years." Kane took a slow drink. "Do not confuse patience with kindness." The pianist continued playing in the next room. Each note seemed too delicate for the violence sitting at the table. Adrian slid the photograph back. "You think threatening my family makes me loyal?" "No," Kane said. "It makes loyalty unnecessary." Adrian stood. Kane leaned back in his chair. "Tomorrow, 5:30, Penn's Landing." Adrian turned toward the door. Kane's voice followed him. "You spent years asking me to open the door." Adrian stopped. Kane smiled. "Deliver the girl and you can finally walk through it." Adrian looked over his shoulder. "Doors work both ways, not this one." Outside, late afternoon sunlight cut between the buildings, cold and pale. Adrian stood on the sidewalk while traffic moved around him. He called Emily. She answered on the third ring. Adrian. Her voice was warm, surprised. He had not called in 2 months. Where are you at school? Noah has practice in 20 minutes. Adrian looked at the photograph still burned into his mind. Go home. What? Pick him up and go home. Lock the doors. Silence. What happened? Nothing. You only call me like this when something happened. Adrian walked toward his car. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not answer numbers you do not know. Adrian, you are scaring me. I need you to listen. She lowered her voice. Are you in trouble? He reached the car but did not open it. I am handling it. That is what you said before the hospital. That is what you said before you disappeared for 11 months. He closed his eyes. Please, Emily. Her anger faded. What do you need? Stay inside tonight. Are you coming here? No. Why not? Because Cain would follow. Because everyone Adrian loved eventually became a weapon in another man's hand. I cannot. Emily was quiet. Then she said, You sound like Dad. The words struck deeper than she intended. Adrian opened his eyes. I have to go. Adrian. He waited. Whatever you are doing, come back from it. The call ended. At the library that evening, Nora sat at their usual table. 2 coffees waited between them. Adrian arrived 20 minutes late. She looked up with relief before remembering she was angry. You came. He placed his bag on the chair beside him. I cannot stay. Nora looked at the untouched coffee. Then why did you come to tell you we should stop meeting? The words landed between them with no sound, but he watched the hurt move across her face. She tried to cover it with a laugh. Meeting, studying, coffee. All of it. I know what you meant. Students turned pages around them. A printer hummed near the stairs. Nora folded her hands over her notebook. Did I do something? No. Then give me a better lie. Adrian looked toward the library entrance. Caleb was not there. Cain's photographer was. The man sat near the circulation desk with a phone in his hand. Adrian forced his gaze back to Nora. You do not know me. I was trying to. That was a mistake. Her eyes sharpened. You do not get to decide that for me. I am deciding for myself. Then look at me when you do it. He did. That was worse. Nora searched his face. Was any of it real? Adrian wanted to tell her about the river walk, the sandwich, the way her hand had felt against his wrist, the sound of her laughter when he deliberately mispronounced a word. He wanted to tell her he knew the exact moment her apartment light turned on each night because he stayed until he saw it. Instead, he said, You should stay away from me. Her mouth tightened. I trusted you because you never tried to impress me. She closed her notebook. I did not realize that was because none of it was real. Nora! She shoved the books into her bag. You wanted distance. You have it. She walked away without taking the coffee. Adrian stayed seated until the photographer followed her out. Then he rose. Outside, Nora crossed the campus alone. The photographer kept half a block behind her. Adrian followed both. Nora boarded a bus. The photographer entered a dark sedan. Adrian watched the sedan pull away. His phone vibrated. A message from Derek. Tomorrow. Do not disappoint him. Nora's shift at the care facility ended just after 1 a.m. The rain had stopped, but the streets remained wet and empty. She stepped outside and checked the transit app. The last bus had been canceled. She sighed and pulled her coat tighter. A dark SUV moved toward the curb. The driver lowered the window. Nora Whitmore. She stopped. Yes, ride request. I did not order one. Facility did. Night staff safety policy. Nora looked back at the locked entrance. The receptionist had already turned off the lobby lights. The driver smiled. Cold night. Nora glanced at the vehicle. There was no company sticker on the windshield, no identification card on the dashboard. The rear door was already unlocked. Her mother's voice returned to her from years earlier. "Trust the detail that does not fit." Nora stepped back. "I will call the facility." The driver opened his door. "No need." He came around the front of the SUV. Nora saw the shape beneath his coat. She turned to run. A second man stepped from the passenger side. He grabbed her arm. Nora drove her heel into his foot and twisted using the movement she had learned during hospital safety training. His grip loosened. She pulled free. The driver reached for her. A figure emerged from the alley. Caleb struck the driver across the face with the grip of a pistol. Bone cracked. The second man drew a gun. Caleb shoved Nora behind a concrete planter as the first shot shattered the facility's glass door. "Stay down!" Nora covered her head. Caleb fired twice. One bullet struck the SUV's front tire. The second hit the passenger door. The attackers scrambled back into the vehicle. The damaged tire screamed against the pavement as the SUV sped away. Nora remained crouched behind the planter. Her breath came too fast. Caleb scanned the street, then lowered his weapon. "Are you hurt?" She stared at him. He was the man from the library, the man near the Riverwalk, the man in the gray sedan. "You have been following me, watching you. That is not better." Caleb reached for her. She moved away. "Do not touch me." He stopped. Nora looked at the broken glass, the blood on the pavement, and the pistol in his hand. "Who are you?" "Someone your mother trusted." The word silenced her. "My mother is dead." Caleb's face changed. "I know." "How do you know her?" "This is not the place. 2 men just tried to drag me into a car. You knew they were coming. I knew they might. And you said nothing. I was trying to keep you calm." Nora laughed, once breathless and angry. "You watched me through windows. I kept you alive." From who Caleb looked down the road. Sirens sounded in the distance. "You need to go home. Lock the door. Speak to no one." "No." His attention returned to her. "No people keep appearing with guns and telling me what to do. No one tells me why. The truth will put you in more danger. I am already standing in broken glass." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Your mother wanted you outside this life." "What life?" He glanced at the approaching lights. The kind that leaves a body count behind every answer. A police car turned onto the street. Caleb stepped back. "Go inside. I will contact you. You do not have my number." "Yes, I do." He disappeared into the alley before the patrol car arrived. Nora stood beneath the blue lights, staring after him. She did not call the police officer by name. She did not trust the way he looked at the tire marks before asking whether anything had been stolen. She gave him the shortest statement possible, then waited until he drove away. At 2:15, she stood outside Adrian's apartment. She had found the address from a university directory. The building was in a narrow street near Northern Liberties above a closed tailor shop. No name appeared on the buzzer. Nora climbed 2 flights and knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Adrian stood barefoot in dark pants and a black shirt. One hand remained behind the door. Nora looked at his shoulder. "What are you holding?" "Nothing." "Move your hand." He did not. She pushed the door wider. A pistol hung at his side. Her face went still. Adrian lowered the weapon. "What happened? Do not ask me that, like you do not know." She stepped inside before he could stop her. The apartment did not look lived in. There were no photographs, no decorations, no dishes drying beside the sink. A packed duffel bag sat near the door. 3 prepaid phones lay across the kitchen counter beside a street map of Philadelphia. Red circles marked the university, the care facility, and Nora's apartment. She stared at the map. Adrian closed the door. "Nora, you mapped my life. It is not what you think. Then explain it." He looked toward the window. A car waited across the street. Kane's people had followed her. Adrian pulled the curtain closed. "You cannot be here. 2 men tried to take me tonight." His expression hardened. "When outside work, did they touch you?" "That is your question. Did they hurt you?" "No." "Who stopped them?" "The man from the library. Caleb." Nora went still. "You know his name?" Adrian said nothing. She took a step back. "He said he knew my mother. He did." How Adrian reached for one of the prepaid phones. Nora knocked it from his hand. "No more calls. No more people speaking around me. You have to leave the city tonight. With you?" "Yes." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You tell me to stay away from you, then I find my address on your wall, and now you want me to disappear with you. I am trying to keep you alive." "Who are you?" Adrian looked at the gun in his hand, then placed it on the counter. "I work for people who hurt others to get what they want." "What people?" He did not answer. Nora looked at the map. "What do they want from me?" "A man named Sebastian Vale." The name meant nothing to her, but Adrian watched for recognition. She saw that too. "Who is he?" "A powerful man." "What does that have to do with me?" "They believe you matter to him. I have never heard his name. That does not mean he has never heard yours." Nora stared at him. The room felt smaller. "Is he the one following me?" "His people are." "Why? To protect you." "From your people." Adrian's silence answered. Nora pressed a hand against the counter. The surface was cold beneath her palm. "Did you meet me by accident?" "Yes." "Did you keep seeing me by accident?" Adrian's face tightened. "No." She looked away. The pain was quieter than anger. "You were studying me." "At first." "For them." "Yes." "What did you tell them?" "Your schedule, where you worked, that you lived alone." Nora closed her eyes. Adrian continued because stopping would only create another lie. "I did not give them your apartment number. That is supposed to help know. You knew someone might take me. I learned the full plan today, and your first choice was to break things off with me. I thought distance might slow them down. You thought wrong." "I know." She turned toward him. "Were you going to hand me over?" Adrian did not speak. Her voice lowered. "Answer me." "I was ordered to." "That was not my question." He met her eyes. "Before I knew you, I might have." Nora looked as though he had struck her. Adrian wished she would slap him, shout, throw something. Instead, she whispered, "And now I am asking you to come with me. Anywhere outside this city." "No." "They will try again. Then tell me why." "I told you what I can. You told me enough to be terrified, and not enough to understand." She picked up her bag. Adrian stepped in front of the door. "Nora, move. If you walk out alone, they will take you. Then give me something real." He stood between her and the hallway, trapped by every promise he had already broken. Finally, he crossed to a locked cabinet near the kitchen. He removed an old envelope. Inside was the photograph Derek had sent him. Helen stood beside Sebastian Vale outside the private clinic. She was young, visibly pregnant, and smiling at a man Nora had never seen. Adrian placed the photograph on the counter. Nora did not touch it. Her eyes moved from her mother's face to Sebastian's hand resting against her back. "Where did you get this?" "A sealed medical file. My father died before I was born." Adrian looked at her. "I do not think he did." The room went silent. Nora picked up the photograph. Her hands began to shake. "You expect me to believe this man is my father? I expect you to believe someone hid the truth." My mother would not lie to me. She might if she thought the truth could get you killed. Nora's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. You do not know anything about her. No. Then do not explain her to me. Adrian stepped back. She studied the photograph again. What do I do? It was the first time her voice sounded lost. Adrian answered carefully. Meet me at Penn's Landing before sunrise. There is someone who can confirm the rest. Caleb, yes. And then, we get you somewhere safe. No more disappearing. You need protection. I need answers. You can have both. Nora looked toward the pistol on the counter. I do not believe you. I know. But you still want me to meet you? Yes. Why should I? Adrian held her gaze. Because the men who came tonight will not stop. She folded the photograph and placed it in her coat pocket. What time? 5:15. Where are the benches near the old ferry terminal? Nora opened the door. Adrian did not stop her this time. At 5:10, fog covered the Delaware River. The waterfront was nearly empty. Nora walked toward the benches with her hands inside her coat pockets. She had not slept. The photograph rested against her heart like a second pulse. Adrian sat facing the water. An empty space waited beside him. She remained standing. You said someone would be here. He is close. Nora looked around. I do not see anyone. You are not supposed to. That is becoming a familiar problem. Adrian stood. In the dark window of a closed restaurant, he saw headlights entering the waterfront road. 3 black SUVs. Too early, too fast. His phone vibrated. A message from Caleb appeared. Compromised. Move her now. Adrian looked at Nora. Get behind the wall. Her face changed. What? Now. A sharp crack cut through the fog. The wooden bench exploded beside them. Adrian seized Nora around the waist and pulled her to the pavement as a second bullet struck the stone railing. She hit the ground beneath him. Across the parking lot, doors opened. Men stepped from the SUVs with rifles raised. Nora looked toward the riverwalk. Caleb emerged through the fog, firing as he moved. Adrian drew the pistol beneath his coat. The quiet man from the library disappeared from his face. He counted the distance, the shooters, the exits. Then he fired. The first gunman fell against an open car door. Nora stared up at Adrian as bullets tore through the place where they had been sitting. Every answer Nora had demanded was now arriving in gunfire. Adrian fired twice from the pavement. The first shot forced one of Kane's men behind an open car door. The second struck the windshield of the nearest SUV, sending white fractures across the glass. Stay down, he said. Nora pressed herself against the wet concrete. Bullets struck the stone wall above them. Chips of rock scattered across her hair and coat. The sound was nothing like it was in movies. It was sharper, closer, almost physical. Each shot seemed to punch the air from her lungs. Adrian moved over her, shielding her body with his. She felt the hard shape of another weapon beneath his jacket. How many guns do you have? Not enough. A round struck the bench and tore through the wood. Adrian looked toward the parking lot. 3 vehicles blocked the main road. At least 7 armed men were moving between them. 2 advanced along the railing, while another pair spread toward the closed restaurants. Someone had planned the attack carefully. Someone had expected Nora to run toward the street. Adrian leaned close. When I move, crawl behind the concrete planter. What about you? I will be beside you. That is not what I asked. His eyes held hers. I know. He rose just enough to fire over the wall. The moment the shooters answered, he pulled Nora toward the planter. They crossed 6 feet of open pavement. It felt like 60. A bullet struck the ground beside Nora's hand. Another passed close enough to disturb her hair. Adrian reached the planter first and dragged her behind it. Are you hit, Gnome? Check. I said no. Check anyway. Nora ran her hands over her ribs, stomach, and legs. Her fingers came away clean. Adrian turned toward the sound of footsteps. One attacker had reached the corner of the restaurant. Adrian watched the man's shadow stretch across the ground before the weapon appeared. He fired once. The attacker fell backward out of sight. Nora stared at Adrian. There was no hesitation in him, no panic, no disbelief. His breathing was controlled. His hands were steady. The quiet man who had shared coffee with her was gone, yet some part of him seemed more honest now than he had ever been in the library. Across the parking lot, Caleb moved between the parked vehicles. He fired in short, measured bursts, forcing Kane's men to turn away from Nora. A younger man followed him from the fog. Nora recognized him as the second watcher from the library. He carried a rifle and moved with the same practiced discipline. The younger guard reached the side of a delivery truck and shouted Caleb right side. Caleb turned. A gunman emerged between two SUVs. Both men fired. The attacker fell, but the younger guard jerked backward and dropped beside the truck. Caleb looked at him only once. Then he kept moving. Nora felt the moment change inside her. A man had fallen 20 yards away. No one screamed. No one froze. The violence continued around his body as if death were only another piece of the plan. She looked at Adrian. What is happening? Kane's men found out about the meeting. Who is Kane? The man trying to take you. Why Adrian checked the magazine in his pistol? Because of Sebastian Vale. That still means nothing to me. It will. I am tired of hearing that. A bullet struck the planter. Nora flinched. Adrian reached for her shoulder. Stay with me. I am right here. No. Look at me. She did. His voice became quieter. When I tell you to move, do not stop. Do not look back. Do not try to help anyone. Her expression hardened. You brought me here. I know. You told me there would be answers. I was trying to get you to Caleb before Kane reached us. Caleb is shooting people. He is also the reason you are alive. So are you. The words left her before she could stop them. Something shifted in Adrian's eyes. Then he looked away. Caleb fired toward the Riverwalk. Cole, he shouted. Service entrance. Adrian located a gray metal door beneath the restaurant awning. It was 40 feet away. There was no cover between the planter and the entrance. Adrian reached inside his coat and removed a spare magazine. Nora noticed the small metal tags hanging beneath his shirt. Military identification. You were not lying about the Marines. No. Was anything else true? Adrian did not answer. Caleb shouted again. Move! Adrian fired toward the SUVs. Caleb and the remaining Vale guards answered from the opposite side. For 3 seconds, Kane's men were forced behind cover. Adrian grabbed Nora's hand. Now! They ran. The wet pavement slipped beneath Nora's shoes. Her lungs burned as she followed him across the open walkway. Halfway to the door, a gunman appeared from behind a food kiosk. Nora saw him first. His reflection moved across the dark restaurant window. Adrian. Adrian turned. The gunman fired. Adrian pushed Nora sideways. The bullet passed between them and struck the metal door. Adrian returned fire. The man disappeared behind the kiosk. Nora hit the pavement on one knee. Pain shot through her leg. Adrian lifted her before she could stand on her own. Can you run? Yes. That was not convincing. I can run. They reached the door. It was locked. Adrian fired once at the latch. The sound exploded beneath the awning. He kicked the door open and pulled Nora into the darkness. The corridor smelled of grease-damp concrete and old cleaning chemicals. Adrian closed the door behind them. A bullet struck the metal from outside. Nora backed away. You said Caleb would be here. He is coming. How do you know? Because he will not leave you. You keep saying that like you know him. I know what he is. And what are you? Footsteps approached outside. Adrian raised his pistol. The door opened. Caleb stumbled through one hand pressed against his side. Blood covered his shirt. Nora stopped asking questions. She caught him before he hit the floor. Lay him down. Adrian locked the door while Nora guided Caleb onto the concrete. The wound was below his right ribs. Blood pushed between his fingers with every breath. Nora tore open his coat. Move your hand. I am fine. You are bleeding through your shirt. I have had worse. Then you should know better than to argue with the person trying to help you. Caleb looked at her. For one brief second, the hard expression left his face. You sound like your mother. Nora pressed her palm over the wound. Do not talk. She looked at Adrian. I need cloth. Adrian pulled off his jacket and tore the bottom of his shirt. Nora folded the fabric and applied pressure. Caleb hissed through his teeth. Exit wound, she asked. He shook his head. Nora checked his back. No blood. The bullet is still inside. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck and counted. His pulse was too fast. His skin was already becoming pale. We need an ambulance. No police, Adrian said. Nora looked at him. He needs surgery. Detective Price controls the first response units in this district. Who is Detective Price? A man Kane pays. You expect me to believe the police are involved too. A heavy impact struck the metal door. Adrian moved toward it. You can believe it after we survive. Another impact shook the frame. Caleb reached inside his coat and removed a key. End of the corridor, he said. Storage room. Basement access. Nora kept pressure on his wound. You are coming with us. Caleb gave Adrian the key. Get her out. Nora tightened her grip on the blood-soaked cloth. I am not leaving him. Nora. It was the first time Caleb had said her name directly. You do not know me, she said. You do not get to give me orders. His eyes remained on hers. I have known you since the day you were born. The words silenced her. The door shook again. Metal bent inward near the latch. Adrian crouched beside them. We moved together. He lifted Caleb beneath one arm. Nora took the other side. They dragged him down the narrow corridor as Kane's men broke through the exterior door. Gunfire erupted behind them. Adrian turned and fired without releasing Caleb. The corridor filled with smoke. They reached a storage room stacked with empty crates. Adrian found a narrow staircase descending beneath a loose sheet of plywood. Caleb struggled to remain conscious. Nora kept speaking to him. What is my mother's middle name? He blinked slowly. Rose. Where did she grow up? Lancaster. What hospital did she work at St. Matthew's? Nora's breath caught. Her mother had worked there before Nora was born. Almost no one knew. They descended into the basement. The passage below was barely wide enough for 2 people. Water covered the floor in shallow pools. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Adrian locked the door above them. Footsteps crossed the storage room. A flashlight moved through the gaps in the wood. Keep going, he whispered. Nora supported Caleb's weight. His blood warmed her hands. What song did she hate? She asked. Caleb's mouth moved. What your mother hated every song Sebastian sang. Despite the pain, something close to a smile appeared on his face. He had a terrible voice. Nora looked at him. You knew her. Caleb's eyes drifted closed. Nora shook his shoulder. Stay awake. I knew her. How? He did not answer. Adrian moved ahead and found a steel door at the end of the tunnel. The key opened it. Cold air entered from an alley behind the waterfront buildings. A dark sedan waited beside the curb. Adrian searched the roofs and windows. Clear. He opened the rear door. Nora climbed inside with Caleb keeping pressure on the wound. Adrian started the engine. The sedan pulled away as police sirens approached the waterfront. Nora looked through the back window. Red and blue lights spread across the fog. Where are we going? A safe place. No. Adrian checked the mirror. No. No more vague words. Where are we going? An old medical office near Society Hill. Who owns it, Vale? Nora looked at Caleb. His head rested against the seat. His breathing was shallow. Sebastian Vale. Yes. Is he a criminal? Adrian did not answer. Nora's voice sharpened. Is he? Yes. What kind? The kind who owns buildings under other names. That is not what I asked. Adrian turned onto a narrow street. The kind men like Kane are afraid of. The answer sat heavily inside the car. Nora looked down at the blood covering her hands. She had spent years learning how the body fought to stay alive, how vessels tightened after injury, how the heart increased its rhythm to preserve pressure, how the brain protected itself by stealing blood from less essential organs. The body was honest in a crisis. People were not. The medical office occupied the ground floor of a closed apartment building. Adrian drove into an underground garage and shut the gate behind them. Two men waited near an elevator. They wore dark coats and carried medical bags. Nora stepped between them and Caleb. Who are you, Vale Medical Team? One said. I need sterile gauze fluids, oxygen, and a surgical kit. The man looked toward Adrian. Nora grabbed his sleeve. Do not look at him. Look at me. The man obeyed. Together they moved Caleb into an examination room. The office had been abandoned publicly, but every light worked. Cabinets held medications. A locked drawer contained surgical instruments. Security monitors showed the garage alley stairwell and surrounding streets. Nora cut away Caleb's shirt. The bullet had entered below the ribs and angled inward. His blood pressure continued to fall. One of the medics prepared an intravenous line. Nora inserted the needle herself. Normal saline. The medic connected the bag. Caleb opened his eyes. Boss, he whispered. Save your breath, Nora said. Call him. Adrian stood near the doorway. I already did. Caleb looked at him. Tell him she is alive. Adrian nodded. Nora packed the wound with gauze and applied pressure. The older medic listened to Caleb's lungs. Breath sounds are equal. No collapse, Nora said. The medic looked at her with surprise. She is a nursing student, Adrian said. Nora did not look at him. She has a name. The room became quiet. The medic continued working. Caleb's condition slowly stabilized. The bleeding weakened beneath Nora's hands. A surgeon was on the way. Only when another medic replaced her at the table did Nora step back. Her arms trembled. Blood covered her fingers, wrists, and the front of her coat. Adrian reached for a clean towel. She took it before he could touch her. Do not. He lowered his hand. Nora walked toward the sink. The water turned red as she washed Caleb's blood away. She scrubbed too hard. Her skin became pink beneath her fingers. Adrian stood several feet behind her. You saved his life. I kept him alive long enough for someone else to save it. You did more than that. She turned off the water. I do not need comfort from you. I am not trying to comfort you. Then what are you trying to do? He did not answer. Nora looked around the medical office. The weapons cabinet was visible through an open door. Rifles stood inside beside boxes of ammunition. A set of security codes appeared on the monitor. In the corner of the room, beneath a shelf of records, stood a framed photograph. Nora moved closer. Sebastian Vale was standing outside a church. He was older than in the photograph with Helen. His hair was silver at the temples. His expression was controlled and unreadable, but his eyes were Nora's, not similar, the same shape, the same dark line around the iris, the same way the left brow lifted slightly higher than the right. Nora removed the photograph from the wall. Adrian watched her. "Is he my father?" The question was barely above a whisper. No one answered. Nora turned toward Caleb. He lay beneath a white sheet while the medics prepared him for transport. She carried the photograph to his side. "Caleb." His eyes opened. "Tell me the truth." He looked at the image in her hands. Nora placed it on the table beside him. "Is Sebastian Vale my father?" Caleb closed his eyes. For a moment Nora thought he might refuse. Then he said yes. The room seemed to narrow around her. The machines continued their soft electronic rhythm. The saline bag released one clear drop at a time. Somewhere beyond the walls a car entered the garage. Nora heard everything and understood nothing. "My father died before I was born." Caleb looked at her with an exhaustion deeper than blood loss. "That was the story Helen chose. My mother lied. She protected you. Everyone keeps using that word. She knew what Sebastian was. And what was he?" Caleb looked toward the armed men outside the room. Nora followed his gaze. Her answer was standing everywhere. She gripped the photograph. "How long did he know about me?" "From the beginning. He knew where I lived." "Yes. My school, yes. My mother's illness." Caleb hesitated. Nora's voice became harder. "Did he know? Yes." She stepped back. 21 years of birthdays, rent notices, school applications, hospital visits, and empty chairs at parent meetings passed through her mind. A stranger had watched all of it. A father who could send armed men to a library had left his daughter to believe he was buried somewhere without a name. Nora turned toward Adrian. "How long have you known?" He did not try to avoid her eyes. "Since the day you sat with me." The answer moved through her more cleanly than a knife. "That day." "Yes." "You knew before our second coffee." "Yes." "Before the clinic." "Yes." "Before the river." "Yes." Each answer removed another memory from her hands. Nora set the photograph down carefully. "Tell me everything." Adrian looked toward Caleb. Caleb gave a weak nod. Adrian closed the examination room door. For a moment he stood with his back to her. When he turned, he looked like a man removing armor piece by piece. "I work for Russell Kane. I understood that much. I move money, deliver messages, clean accounts. Sometimes I make sure people keep promises. Do you kill them?" Adrian was silent. Nora already knew. She looked at the pistol at his side. "How many, I do not know." "That is a lie." "No. It is worse." Her face tightened. "Why did Kane send you to me?" "He did not send me the first night. You chose the table by accident. The rest. He told me to stay close, learn your schedule, find out who you trusted, find out what frightened you." Nora folded her arms across herself. "What did you tell him? That you worked nights, that you lived alone, that your mother was dead?" Her eyes filled. Adrian continued before fear could make him hide again. "I told him you were observant, that you noticed cars, that you did not scare easily. Did you tell him about our conversations?" "Some." "Which ones?" "The first few." "The coffee shop." "Num." "The river." "Num." "My mother." Adrian hesitated. Nora saw the answer before he gave it. "That started as work," he said. Her hand struck his face. The sound cracked through the room. Adrian did not move. Nora's palm burned. "You sat beside me while I talked about burying her." "I know. You let me tell you things I had not said to anyone." "I know. You do not get to keep saying that." His cheek had already begun to redden. You do not get to stand there and separate the real moments from the lies after using all of them. I am not asking you to believe me. Then why are you explaining? Because you asked for the truth. The truth would have mattered 3 weeks ago. Yes, the truth would have mattered before men dragged me toward a car. Yes, the truth would have mattered before I was on the ground with bullets over my head. Yes, his agreement made her angrier. Fight back. Adrian looked at her. What? Give me one of your careful answers. Tell me you had no choice. Tell me Kane threatened you. Tell me this was survival. He did threaten me. Nora laughed once. There it is. My sister and her son. She stopped. Adrian removed the photograph of Emily and Noah from his pocket and placed it beside Sebastian's picture. Kane has been watching them. Nora looked at the image. A woman stood beside a child outside a school. The boy wore a yellow raincoat. For one dangerous second, Nora understood. Then she hated herself for understanding. So you traded me for them? No. You were ordered to. Yes. Would you have done it? Adrian's jaw tightened. Before I knew you, I might have. The honesty hurt more than an excuse. And after, I decided I would kill Kane before I gave you to him. Nora looked at him. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. Did you decide that before or after you kissed me in your head on the river, Adrian's eyes changed? Nora had seen it that night. She had felt the silence between them. He looked away. She smiled without humor. At least that part was real. All of it became real. Became. He closed his eyes briefly. I do not know when. I do. Adrian looked at her. It became real when the lies started costing you something. He had no answer. The surgeon arrived with 2 assistants. They prepared Caleb for transport to a private operating room. As the stretcher passed, Caleb reached for her hand. His grip was weak. Your mother loved you more than anything. Nora looked down at him. Did she love Sebastian? Caleb's eyes held hers. Yes. That did not save her. No. The stretcher moved into the hallway. Nora remained in the examination room. Adrian stood by the door. Outside, more vehicles entered the garage. Armed men crossed the security screens. A convoy was forming. One of Sebastian's men stepped into the room. We are moving Miss Whitmore to the Vermont house. Nora turned toward him. No. The man looked at Adrian, then toward the hallway. Caleb gave the order. Caleb is going into surgery. Mr. Vale confirmed it. Nora picked up her mother's photograph. Tell Mr. Vale I am not going to Vermont. The guard hesitated. He does not make requests. Nora walked closer. Neither do I. The man stared at her, perhaps seeing Sebastian in her face for the first time. Adrian moved beside the door. She goes where she chooses. The guard looked at the weapon on Adrian's belt. You are not in a position to speak. He is right, Nora said. Adrian turned toward her. She did not meet his eyes. He is still a liar. That does not make you my owner. The guard touched the radio at his collar. Nora continued. No more safe houses, no more cars with black windows, no more men following me through grocery stores and libraries while everyone decides how much truth I am allowed to survive. The guard lowered his hand. What do you want? Nora looked at Sebastian's photograph. I want to meet my father. The word felt foreign in her mouth. The guard stepped into the hallway to make the call. Adrian spoke quietly. Once you go to him, your old life may not be waiting when you come back. Nora looked at the blood beneath her fingernails. My old life was built by people who thought a lie was safer than a choice. She gathered her coat. It is already gone. 30 minutes later, Nora walked into the underground garage. A line of black vehicles waited beneath the fluorescent lights. Men opened doors and spoke into radios. Every movement was controlled. Every face turned toward her, then quickly away. Adrian was placed in a separate vehicle. 2 armed guards sat beside him. Nora noticed, but said nothing. She entered the rear seat of the first car. The door closed with a heavy sound. Philadelphia moved beyond the tinted windows as the convoy traveled west. Nora watched row houses become highways, then dark trees and stone walls. No one spoke to her. She held the photograph of Helen and Sebastian in both hands. Her mother looked young and happy. Sebastian looked at Helen as though the rest of the world had disappeared. Nora had never seen her mother look at anyone that way. The convoy left the main road and passed through iron gates. A long drive curved toward a stone estate surrounded by bare trees. Lights burned in every window. Armed men stood along the steps. Nora stepped from the car. The night air smelled of rain and cedar. Another vehicle stopped behind hers. Adrian emerged between 2 guards. Their eyes met. There was no comfort in the look, only the shared knowledge that the table in the library belonged to people who no longer existed. The front doors opened. Sebastian Vale stood alone beneath the light of the entrance hall. He wore a dark suit with no tie. Silver marked his hair. His hands rested at his sides. For the first time in 21 years, he looked at his daughter without glass distance or another man's report between them. Nora climbed the steps. Sebastian did not move toward her. Neither did she. The silence between them carried every birthday he had missed and every danger he had watched from the shadows. His eyes moved across her face as if he were searching for the child he had never held. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than Nora expected. "You look like your mother." Nora stopped beneath the doorway. That seems to be what people say when they do not know how to apologize. Sebastian Vale remained beneath the light of the entrance hall. For a man whose name made dock owners lower their voices, he looked strangely unprepared. His gaze moved from Nora's face to the blood dried along the sleeve of her coat. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Caleb, in surgery." Sebastian's jaw tightened. And Adrian Cole alive. Something colder entered his eyes at Adrian's name. Nora noticed. "You can ask about him later." Sebastian stepped aside. The entrance hall stretched behind him in polished stone and dark wood. A staircase curved toward the second floor. Old paintings lined the walls, all solemn men in black suits and women who looked as though smiling had once been forbidden. Nora crossed the threshold. The doors closed behind her. The sound echoed through the house. Sebastian led her into a sitting room where a fire burned beneath a carved marble mantel. A silver tray waited on the table with coffee, water, and untouched food. Someone had prepared for her arrival. Someone had known she might come here one day. Nora remained standing. Sebastian moved toward the tray. "You should eat. I am not hungry. You have been awake all night." "So have you." He looked at her. Nora removed the photograph from her coat and placed it on the table. Helen stood beside Sebastian outside the private clinic, one hand resting over her stomach. "You knew where she was?" "Yes." "You knew she was pregnant?" "Yes." "You knew I existed?" "Yes." Each answer was calm. That calm angered her more than denial would have. Nora stepped closer. "You watched us." Sebastian did not move. "I made sure you were safe." "Safe." Her voice rose. "My mother worked double shifts while she was sick. I took out loans she was ashamed to ask me about. We counted grocery money at the kitchen table. I sent support. She never told me. She returned most of it." Nora stared at him. "She returned it." She did not want anything that could be traced back to me. And you accepted that. I respected her decision. No, you used it. Sebastian's expression changed slightly. Nora continued. You let her make the sacrifice so you could call it respect. You stayed in this house. She raised me alone. Then you told yourself it was what she wanted. It was what she demanded. She demanded that you leave this life. He looked toward the fire. Nora saw the answer before he gave it. You chose this. Yes. The word settled between them. No excuse. No explanation. Only the truth. Nora's throat tightened. My mother died believing you would never choose us. Sebastian's eyes returned to hers. She was right. The fire shifted behind him. For the first time, Nora saw something beneath his control. Not weakness, something older. A wound that had never closed because he had never allowed anyone to touch it. She picked up the photograph. How did you meet her? Sebastian looked at the younger version of himself in Nora's hand. I was shot outside a restaurant. Nora waited. It was late. I was losing blood. The men with me could not take me to a hospital without bringing police and enemies with us. So you found a nurse. She found me. A faint change entered his voice. She was leaving St. Matthew's after a night shift. She saw blood on the sidewalk and followed it into an alley. That sounds like her. She ordered 3 armed men to move away from me because they were blocking the light. Despite herself, Nora could picture it. Helen in hospital shoes, exhausted and furious, refusing to be intimidated. Sebastian continued. She stopped the bleeding. Then she told me that if I died, it would be because I was too stubborn to listen. Nora lowered the photograph. Did she know who you were? Not that night. When did she find out? 3 months later. And she stayed. For a while. His gaze moved toward the windows. The truth did not frighten her. What it did to people frightened her. Nora thought of the body beside the delivery truck at Penn's Landing. She was right. Yes. Why did she leave Sebastian's silence lasted too long? Nora stepped closer. Tell me. She became pregnant. She asked me to walk away from everything. You could have. No. You mean you would not? He looked at her. At that time, leaving would have started a war. Men depended on me. Families depended on what I controlled. My mother depended on you. I know. No, you know now. That is different. Sebastian accepted the blow without defending himself. Nora felt tears gather, but refused to release them. What did she say when you chose? She said love without courage was another kind of abandonment. The room went still. Nora looked at him. That sounds like her, too. Sebastian crossed to a locked cabinet beside the fireplace. He removed a narrow wooden box. When he returned, he placed it on the table. Inside was a sealed envelope. Nora recognized the handwriting immediately. Her name was written across the front. Her breath stopped. My mother wrote this. Yes. When 2 weeks before she died. Nora looked up sharply. You saw her? No. Caleb did. You knew she was dying. Yes. And you still stayed away. She refused to see me. You could have gone anyway. I had already ignored enough of her choices. Nora touched the envelope but did not open it. Why did she leave this with you? She left it with Caleb. He was told to give it to you only if the truth became impossible to contain. Nora held the letter against the table. 21 years of silence had been folded into one envelope. Sebastian stepped back. I will leave you alone. No. He stopped. You stayed away long enough. Nora broke the seal. The paper trembled in her hands. She began reading silently. The first line made her close her eyes. My sweet Nora, if you are holding this, then the life I tried to build around you has finally opened. She continued. Helen wrote that she had never regretted having her. She admitted that she had lied about Nora's father not because Sebastian had forgotten them, but because he had not. He had sent men, money, protection, questions through people Helen trusted. She had rejected most of it because she feared every gift carried a thread back into his world. Helen did not call Sebastian evil. She did not call him good. She wrote that he loved deeply but had spent too many years believing love could be managed like territory. Nora reached the final lines. Your blood may explain where you came from. It does not decide who you become. She read the sentence twice. Then she folded the paper carefully. Sebastian had not moved. Nora looked at him. She loved you. Yes. She was angry with you. Yes. She never stopped being angry. No. A tear escaped before Nora could stop it. She wiped it away. You could have changed. Sebastian's voice was quiet. I know. You keep saying that as if knowing is enough. It is not. Then what is? He looked toward the closed doors. Whatever you decide. Nora held the letter against her chest. You think I came here to decide your punishment? I think you came here because everyone else took your choices, and now you want to give them back. Yes. Convenient. Yes. The answer almost broke her anger. Almost. A knock came at the door. Sebastian's expression hardened before the sound finished. Enter. A man in a dark suit stepped inside. Caleb is out of surgery. Nora straightened. Is he alive? Yes. The surgeon removed the bullet. There was no damage to the lung. He lost a great deal of blood, but he is stable. Nora let out the breath she had been holding. The man continued. The captains are waiting. Sebastian looked at Nora. You do not need to be there. Where? The council room. Why are they waiting, Adrian Cole? Nora folded Helen's letter and placed it inside her coat. What about him? Sebastian's eyes became unreadable. They want him dead. The council room occupied the oldest part of the house. A long walnut table filled the center beneath a low brass chandelier. 12 men waited around it. Some stood near the walls. Others sat with their hands folded in front of them. Every conversation stopped when Nora entered beside Sebastian. She felt their attention move across her face. Recognition passed through the room in careful silence. At the far end, Adrian sat in a wooden chair. His wrists were restrained behind him. 2 guards stood at his shoulders. A bruise darkened one side of his face. Blood had dried near his collar. His eyes found Nora immediately. She looked away first. Sebastian took the chair at the head of the table. No seat had been prepared for Nora. She chose one beside him and sat. A heavy man with white hair leaned forward. Sebastian? This should be handled privately. Nora looked at him. Then you should have killed me before bringing me into the house. The man's expression tightened. Sebastian said nothing. Another captain, thin and sharp-faced, glanced toward Adrian. He works for Kane. He led her to the waterfront. Adrian did not deny it. The white-haired captain pointed toward him. He gave Kane her schedule, her workplace, her habits. We found copies in Shaw's files. Nora's stomach tightened. Sebastian looked at Adrian. Did you accept Kane's assignment? Yes. Did you earn my daughter's trust under false pretenses? Yes. Did you provide information that placed her in danger? Yes. The room shifted with quiet anger. Sebastian's voice remained calm. Give me one reason you should leave this room alive. Adrian looked at Nora, then he looked back at Sebastian. There is not one. The honesty silenced the room. The white-haired captain stood. Then we are wasting time. He reached inside his coat. Nora spoke before he could draw the weapon. Sit down. The captain stared at her. She held his gaze. "Sit down." He looked toward Sebastian. Sebastian did not help him. The captain slowly returned to his chair. Nora turned to Adrian. "Why did you warn Caleb to get you away from Kane? Why did you bring me to Penn's Landing? Because I thought Caleb could move you before Kane knew. You were wrong." "Yes. Why should anyone here trust you now?" "They should not." The answer disturbed several men more than a defense would have. Nora leaned back. "Good." Sebastian watched her. She turned toward the table. "Kill him and Kane learns he betrayed him." The thin captain frowned. "Kane already knows." "No. Kane knows the ambush failed. He does not know why. He will find out. Only if someone tells him." The room became quieter. Nora looked at each man in turn. "You have an enemy who believes Adrian Cole still belongs to him. You also have Adrian Cole sitting in this room." The white-haired captain shook his head. "We do not use traitors. You use whatever works." He bristled. "You have been inside this house for less than an hour, and Kane found me before any of you stopped him." No one answered. Nora continued. "You had guards following me. You had records hidden. You had money and cars and men with guns. He still learned my name, my schedule, and where I worked." She looked at Sebastian. "Someone failed." The words landed heavily. Sebastian did not object. Nora looked toward Adrian. "Right now, Kane believes he has one man close enough to me to finish the job." The thin captain said, "And you want to give him another chance?" "No." She met Adrian's eyes. "I want to use the lie he already told." Adrian watched her carefully. Sebastian leaned back. "What are you proposing?" Nora looked around the room. Maps covered one wall. Colored markers showed warehouses, freight routes, and sections of the river. Men had spent years turning Philadelphia into lines and territories. She stood and crossed toward the map. "What does Kane want?" A younger captain answered. "The Delaware shipping lanes." "Why money?" "That is not enough." The white-haired captain said, "Control." Nora nodded. "He does not want a warehouse. He wants Sebastian to surrender." She looked at the web of roads and docks. "Kane planned to use me because he believed my father would move for me." Sebastian's face remained still. "He was right," Nora said. The room shifted again. Nora pointed to the marked locations. "You keep talking about attacking his warehouses, his drivers, his accounts. That is how organizations collapse," the thin captain said. "No, that is how bodies bleed." Several men exchanged looks. Nora continued. "A body can lose blood from a hand and survive. It can lose a foot and survive. It can even lose part of an organ and adapt." She touched the center of Kane's territory on the map. "But if the heart stops moving, the rest becomes useless." The white-haired captain studied her. "You want Kane himself. I want him to leave the places he controls and enter a place we control." Sebastian looked at Adrian. "And Cole is the reason he moves." "Yes." Nora returned to the table. "Adrian tells Kane he escaped the waterfront with me." The thin captain shook his head. "Kane will demand proof. He will get it. And then Adrian says he no longer trusts Derek Shaw or Detective Price. He wants the money Kane promised him. He asks for a private exchange." The white-haired captain laughed without humor. "Russell Kane does not go anywhere privately. He will if he thinks Sebastian does not know I am missing." The room quieted. Nora looked at Sebastian. "He believes your weakness is me." Sebastian said, "He is correct." The answer struck her, but she did not show it. "Then we make him believe that weakness has been taken." The captains began speaking at once. Too dangerous, too uncertain. Kane would send others. Adrian would turn again. Sebastian raised one hand. Silence returned. He looked at Nora. "What do you need?" The question changed the room. Not what do you think? Not why should I allow this? What do you need? Nora looked toward Adrian. His phone, his voice, the information Kane expects him to know. Sebastian's eyes narrowed. And you, I become the proof. An hour later, Nora stood inside a storage room beneath the estate. The walls were concrete. A single hanging light cast hard shadows across the floor. A camera had been placed on a metal table. Adrian stood near the door without restraints. Caleb's replacement, a broad man named Thomas Reed, watched him with a pistol visible beneath his jacket. Nora opened a medical kit. Inside were gauze saline, makeup used for training injuries, and a sterile needle. Adrian watched her remove the needle. "What are you doing?" "Making the video convincing. You do not need to use real blood. Kane knows what fake blood looks like. So do I. That is why I am not asking you." She cleaned the inside of her arm. Adrian stepped closer. Thomas moved his hand toward the pistol. Adrian stopped. "Nora." She inserted the needle and drew a small amount of blood into a syringe. Her hands remained steady. "You wanted honesty," Adrian said. "This is not safe." She looked at him. "A man tried to put me in a car last night. Safe is no longer a useful word." She mixed the blood with water and pressed it into her hairline. The effect was immediate. A thin red line moved down her temple. She added dark color beneath one eye and along her cheek. Adrian looked away. Nora noticed. "Does it bother you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I know what real wounds look like." "So do I." "That is different." She set the brush down. "Everything is different when it happens to someone you care about." He looked at her. Nora turned away before he could answer. Thomas tied her wrists with rope. Adrian stepped forward. Too tight. Thomas ignored him. Nora flexed her fingers. "It is fine. It is cutting circulation." "I said it is fine." She sat in the chair beneath the hanging light. The camera began recording. Adrian moved behind it. Nora lowered her head. When she looked up, she did not need to pretend to be afraid. The memory of the SUV door opening returned, the sound of bullets striking stone, the sight of Caleb's blood, the knowledge that her mother had built an entire life around fear of this world. Adrian spoke from behind the camera. "Say your name." Nora looked toward the lens. "Nora Whitmore." "Say where you are." "I do not know." Her voice trembled naturally. Adrian's expression changed. Thomas held up a newspaper with the date visible. Adrian said, "Tell Sebastian Vale what happens if he refuses." Nora stared into the lens. For a second, she imagined her father watching. Then she said, "He knows." Thomas stopped the recording. The room returned to silence. Adrian crossed toward her and untied the rope immediately. Nora rubbed her wrists. "You tied it too tight." His hands stopped. "You said it was fine. I was talking to Thomas." Adrian lowered his eyes. "I am sorry." Nora stood. "Sorry is what comes before change." He looked at her. "I know." "No. You know how to say the words." She picked up the medical kit. "I have not seen the change yet." Adrian remained beside the chair after she left. Later, Sebastian found him alone in the council room. The captains had gone to prepare the operation. Only the maps remained. Sebastian closed the door. Adrian did not turn. "You should have killed me," he said. Sebastian walked toward the table. "I considered it. What stopped you, my daughter?" Adrian looked at him. Sebastian's gaze was cold. "Do not mistake her decision for forgiveness." "I do not. If you betray her again, there will not be a room or a question." Adrian nodded once. Sebastian placed a phone on the table. "You make one call. You say only what was approved." I understand. Caleb will monitor every signal. He should. Sebastian studied him. Kane threatened your sister. Yes. Vale men are outside her home in Baltimore. Adrian's expression hardened. She will not like that. She does not need to. She needs to know. Sebastian's eyes narrowed. Adrian continued. Watching someone without telling them is how this started. For several seconds, the room held two men who had both confused protection with permission. Sebastian looked away first. She will be informed. Adrian picked up the phone. Before he could dial, Nora entered. Her face had been cleaned. The bruise makeup was gone. Helen's letter rested inside her coat. She looked at Adrian. Do you still want the life Kane promised you? The money, no. The passport, no. Why? Adrian looked toward the rain-dark windows. I thought leaving Philadelphia would make me free. He turned back to her. Then I met someone who made me care what kind of man left. Nora's expression did not soften, but she did not look away. Call him. Adrian dialed. Russell Kane answered after one ring. Cole. Adrian put the call on speaker. I have her. Silence. Then Kane said, We're safe. You were told to deliver her. Your men opened fire before I could. Derek says Vale took her. Derek ran. A pause. Adrian continued. I pulled her through the service tunnel. Caleb Ward went down. I found a car before the police arrived. Kane's breathing remained calm. Proof. Adrian sent the video. Everyone in the room waited. 30 seconds passed. Then Kane spoke again. She looks frightened. She watched 3 men die. Is she hurt enough? Nora's hand tightened at her side. Kane said, Bring her to the club. No. The word was sharp. Sebastian watched Adrian carefully. Kane's voice changed. You are forgetting who you work for. I am remembering what happened at the waterfront. What do you want the money? In person. Kane laughed quietly. You think you are negotiating. I think Derek sold the meeting to someone. I think Price sent the police too early. I think I am holding the only thing Sebastian Vale cannot replace. A long silence followed. Nora watched Adrian's face. He had become the man from the waterfront again. Controlled, cold, believable. Kane said, Where Philadelphia Navy Yard, Pier 47. Midnight. You come alone. So do you. Kane laughed again. No. Then send Derek and lose the girl. Adrian ended the call. The room held its breath. 3 seconds later, the phone rang again. Adrian answered. Kane said midnight. The line went dead. Sebastian looked at the map. He will scout the location. Nora nodded. Let him. The white-haired captain returned with 3 other men. Sebastian explained the meeting. They began discussing routes and positions. Nora listened. Every proposal assumed Kane would approach from the West Road. Every team depended on the same access point. She looked at the men around the table. How many people know the full plan? Sebastian answered. Everyone in this room. That is too many. The thin captain frowned. You think one of us works for Kane. I think Kane found me through a sealed file, learned about the waterfront meeting, and sent police units controlled by Price. Price could have found the location. How? No one answered. Nora looked toward the maps. Give 3 captains 3 different exit routes for Adrian after the exchange. The white-haired captain studied her. And then we see which road the police search. Sebastian understood first. He assigned the West Tunnel to Martin Crowe, the River Service Road to Thomas Reed, the northern gate to Vincent Hale. Each man received the information privately. An hour later, a radio operator entered the room carrying a printed report. Police units are staging near the West Tunnel. Nora looked at Sebastian. Who had that route? His face became stone. Martin Crow. No one spoke. Crow had served beside Sebastian for 18 years. He had attended funerals, weddings, and baptisms. He had eaten at this table more times than Nora had. Sebastian gave one quiet order. Bring him. 2 guards left. Minutes later, shouting echoed from the hall. A gunshot followed. The doors opened. One guard entered with blood on his sleeve. Crow ran. Alive? Sebastian asked. Yes. We have him. His phone. The guard placed it on the table. The screen showed one outgoing message sent less than a minute earlier. They know. Nora stared at the words. Sebastian looked toward the clock. 11:22. Move every team he ordered. Now. The estate came alive around them. Men loaded vehicles, radios filled with coded voices. Weapons cases opened across the garage. At 11:40, Nora stood inside a mobile command vehicle near Pier 47. Rain tapped against the roof. Security feeds showed dark warehouses, stacked freight containers, and the empty loading yard. Adrian stood beneath a broken light near the center of the pier, alone. A black case rested at his feet. Caleb's voice came through the radio from the medical room at the estate. Weak but awake. Convoy approaching from the west. Nora watched headlights appear on the first camera. Then another voice cut through. Movement at the eastern service gate. A second set of headlights entered from behind the veil positions. The command vehicle fell silent. Nora leaned toward the screens. Kane had received Crow's warning. He knew the pier was a trap, and he had entered through the only road that placed his men behind Sebastian's line. The first shot struck before anyone inside the command vehicle could speak. A security monitor flashed white. One of the outer cameras went dark. Then another. Nora leaned toward the remaining screens. Men moved along the eastern wall using stacked containers as cover. They wore black rain jackets over body armor. 2 climbed the steel stairs toward the warehouse roof, while a third group advanced between parked trucks. Kane had not come to survive the trap. He had come to turn it against them. A burst of gunfire rattled through the yard. The command vehicle shook as bullets struck its armored side. Thomas Reed reached for Nora. We are moving you. No, this vehicle is exposed. So are the men outside. Nora. She looked at the monitors. Sebastian's teams had been positioned toward the western road. Now they were trapped between the expected convoy and the shooters entering from the east. If they turned toward one threat, they exposed themselves to the other. On the center screen, Adrian stood beneath the broken warehouse light. He had heard the shots. He did not run. He lowered one hand toward the pistol hidden behind his back and watched the decoy vehicle approaching from the west. Nora grabbed the radio. Adrian, the western car is a distraction. His voice answered through static. I know. Kane entered from the east. Then he is already inside the yard. A bullet shattered the lamp above him. Darkness swallowed the center of the pier. Adrian rolled behind the black case as gunfire crossed the open space. Thomas pulled Nora away from the monitor. We leave now. Sebastian's voice came through the radio. Take her out through the southern gate. Nora pressed the transmit button. The southern gate leads past the open loading lanes. It is the fastest route. It is exposed from the roof. A pause. Then Sebastian said, That is not your concern. Nora stared at the screens. Men were dying inside a plan she had helped design. It became my concern when you let me sit at the table. She turned to Thomas. Show me the full yard layout. He hesitated. Now. Thomas pulled a folded industrial map from beneath the console and spread it across the table. The Navy Yard had once moved military cargo through a system of rails loading arms and motorized container tracks. Most of the machinery had been abandoned, but several lanes still connected to a remote terminal inside the command vehicle. Nora studied the map. Kane's convoy had entered between two long rows of freight containers. The eastern exit remained open behind them. A second road led north toward the river warehouse. She pointed to the tracks. "Can these containers still move?" Thomas looked at the operator. The operator nodded. "Some of them. Slowly." "Which ones?" He marked 3 rows. Nora followed the lines with her finger. "Move row 6 toward the eastern gate." The operator looked at Thomas. "That will block our own escape. It will block theirs too." Thomas shook his head. "We do not know where our people are. They are west of the containers. Kane's men are east." A voice screamed over the radio. "Roof shooters, 2 men down." Nora looked at Thomas. "If we do nothing, the eastern team keeps advancing." Thomas pressed the radio. "All units clear row 6. Repeat, clear row 6. He looked at the operator. "Move it." The old machinery groaned beneath the yard. On the monitor, a line of containers began sliding across the tracks. Metal wheels screamed against steel. Kane's men turned toward the sound. The first container moved into the eastern road. A black SUV tried to reverse but struck the vehicle behind it. The second container sealed the gap. The third shifted across the northern lane, forcing Kane's convoy toward the central warehouse. Thomas stared at the screens. "You made a corridor." Nora studied the new shape of the yard. "No, I made an artery." Sebastian's voice came through the radio. "What did you do?" "I narrowed the field." Outside, veil shooters began firing into the corridor. Kane's numerical advantage disappeared between the walls of steel. His men could no longer spread out. Sebastian spoke to every unit. "Push them toward the warehouse." Several captains hesitated. Nora heard one of them ask who had ordered the container movement. Sebastian looked through the rain toward the command vehicle. Then his voice returned. "You heard my daughter." The words moved through Nora more sharply than the gunfire. "Not Miss Whitmore. Not the girl. My daughter." Outside Vale, men changed position. The line moved. At the center of the yard, Adrian reached the western decoy vehicle. Its rear door opened. 2 men stepped out. Russell Kane was not with them. Adrian shot the first before the man raised his weapon. The second fired through the open door. The bullet struck the pavement beside Adrian's foot. Adrian moved behind the engine block and returned fire. The man fell across the hood. A third figure emerged from the passenger side. Derek Shaw. Rain ran down his face. "You should have taken the passport," Derek shouted. Adrian kept the vehicle between them. "You should have learned when to leave." Derek fired twice. One round tore through Adrian's coat. The other struck the black case. Adrian moved toward the rear bumper. Derek expected him to rise on the opposite side. Instead, Adrian dropped beneath the vehicle and fired through the gap below the chassis. The bullet struck Derek's leg. He collapsed against the door. Adrian stood and crossed the distance. Derek tried to raise his pistol. Adrian kicked it away. For a moment, the 2 men looked at each other through the rain. Derek smiled through the pain. "You think she sees a hero when she looks at you, no. What does she see? The truth." Adrian struck him across the jaw. Derek fell unconscious beside the vehicle. Adrian reached for his radio. Before he could speak, a gun pressed against his back. Russell Kane stepped from the darkness behind him. "You always did look in the wrong direction when feelings were involved." Adrian froze. Kane removed the pistol from Adrian's hand. 2 armed men appeared near the warehouse entrance. Adrian looked toward the eastern road. "You came through the service lane." Crow earned his final payment. "He is alive. Not for long." Kane pressed the gun harder against Adrian's ribs. "The problem with men who want a new life is that they begin to believe they deserve one." Adrian turned before Kane could fire. He caught Kane's wrist and forced the weapon upward. The shot went into the warehouse roof. Adrian drove his shoulder into Kane's chest. They struck the metal wall. One of Kane's guards raised his rifle. Adrian pulled Kane between them. The guard hesitated. Adrian twisted the pistol from Kane's hand and fired toward the guard. The man moved behind a loading machine. Kane struck Adrian across the face with the back of his fist. Adrian lost his grip. The second guard fired. The bullet entered Adrian's shoulder and spun him sideways. He hit the concrete floor behind an old steel press. Pain flooded his arm. His fingers stopped responding. Kane picked up the fallen pistol. "You should have delivered the girl." Adrian pressed his hand against the wound. "You should have stayed out of the library." Kane fired. The bullet struck the press above Adrian's head. Adrian crawled deeper behind the machinery. Kane looked toward the command vehicle. He took Adrian's radio and pressed the transmit button. Nora. Inside the vehicle, every voice stopped. Nora recognized Kane before he said another word. His voice was calm, almost polite. "I have something that belongs to you." A gunshot echoed through the radio. Nora gripped the console. "Adrian, he is alive." Sebastian answered first. "You want me, Russell. I wanted your river. You lost it." Kane laughed quietly. "I have your daughter's favorite liar bleeding on the floor. I still have leverage." Nora pressed the radio. "What do you want?" "You inside the warehouse." Sebastian turned toward her from the front monitor. "No." Kane continued. "No guards, no father, no clever machines moving around the yard." Nora looked at the map. The warehouse had 3 entrances. The main loading doors faced the yard. A smaller office entrance opened toward the river. Beneath the building, an old maintenance tunnel connected to the southern utility room. Thomas saw where she was looking. "No." Nora pressed the radio again. "How do I know Adrian is alive?" Kane lowered the device. A moment later, Adrian's voice came through, strained and breathless. "Do not come in." Kane struck him. The sound carried through the radio. Nora closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she opened them. "I am coming." Sebastian's voice cut across the channel. "You are not." She turned toward his image on the monitor. "He expects me through the loading doors. You stay where you are." Then he kills Adrian and moves to the river exit. Cole accepted that risk. "I did not accept it for him." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "This is not a debate." Nora picked up the medical bag beside the console. "That is how my mother lost 21 years with you." The words silenced him. Nora looked at Thomas. The maintenance tunnel. He did not move. "Caleb would tell you no." "Caleb taught me to ask the right question." "What question?" "Can you cover me?" Thomas stared at her. Then he drew his pistol. "Yes." The tunnel entrance lay beneath a rusted service hatch behind the command vehicle. Nora descended first. Cold water reached her ankles. Thomas followed with a flashlight covered by his hand. The tunnel smelled of oil and river mud. Every step echoed. Above them, gunfire moved through the yard in short, violent bursts. Nora carried the medical bag against her chest. She had no gun. Thomas had offered one. She refused. She knew how to stop bleeding. She knew how to find a pulse. She knew how quickly fear could make hands useless. A firearm would not turn her into Adrian or Caleb. It would only make Kane believe she intended to fight him on his terms. The tunnel ended beneath a narrow steel ladder. Thomas lifted the hatch slightly. Darkness waited above. He listened. No one in the utility room. They climbed. Inside the warehouse, machinery formed long rows of black shapes. Rain struck the metal roof. Emergency lights glowed near the exits. Nora could hear Kane somewhere beyond the steel press. His voice carried across the open floor. "Your father is moving men toward the river door." Adrian answered weakly. "He is moving them toward you." Kane laughed. Nora motioned for Thomas to stay behind the utility wall. She moved alone between the machines. A trail of blood marked the concrete. She followed it. Adrian lay behind the press with one hand clamped over his shoulder. His face had lost color. His eyes widened when he saw her. "What are you doing?" "Keeping you alive. You need to leave. People have been saying that to me all week." She opened the medical bag. The bullet had passed through the upper shoulder. Blood continued to pulse from the rear wound. Nora cut his shirt away. Adrian gritted his teeth. "This is not the time. It is exactly the time." She packed gauze against the exit wound and wrapped a pressure bandage around his shoulder. His breathing steadied. "You should not be here," he whispered. This time they might be right. They are. Nora tightened the bandage. "Then stay alive long enough to tell me again." Adrian looked at her. Even now, with blood on his clothes and violence moving around them, the library remained somewhere behind his eyes. The empty chair, the coffee, the woman who had asked permission to sit beside a man who had never believed anyone stayed without wanting something. He reached for her hand. "Nora." She looked at him. "I am sorry. I know." "No. Let me finish." Footsteps moved near the river doors. Nora pressed a finger to his lips. "Finish later." She looked through the gap beneath the press. Kane crossed toward the loading bay with one guard beside him. The second guard remained near the office entrance. Adrian whispered, "He is trying to draw Sebastian through the main floor." Nora studied the open loading bay. Across the yard, veil men were moving toward it. Above the bay, a shadow shifted along the roofline. A shooter waited on the catwalk. Nora grabbed Adrian's radio. "Sebastian, stop." No answer. She tried again. "Do not enter the warehouse." Sebastian's voice returned. "Where are you inside?" Silence. Nora continued. "There is a shooter above the loading bay. Kane wants you in the open." A burst of gunfire sounded outside. Veil men pulled back from the entrance. The rooftop shooter fired too late. His bullet struck empty concrete. Thomas moved from the utility wall and fired toward the catwalk. The shooter dropped behind the railing. Kane heard the exchange. He turned. Nora. She rose slowly from behind the press. Adrian reached for her coat. She stepped beyond his hand. Kane saw her between the machines. A smile spread across his face. There she is. Nora walked into the open. Kane raised the pistol. "You look more like Sebastian up close. I have been hearing that a lot. You should be grateful. His name kept you alive. My mother kept me alive." Kane tilted his head. "Helen believed she could raise you outside this world. She did. And yet, here you are." Nora stopped 10 feet away. Rain blew through the open river doors behind him. The dark water moved beyond the pier. Kane glanced toward Adrian. Men like him always choose themselves eventually. Adrian tried to stand. His injured arm failed beneath him. Kane pointed the gun toward Nora again. "Your father is no different. You do not know him. I know exactly what he is. So do I." Kane's smile faded slightly. "He watched you grow up from behind glass. He let your mother die alone. He sent soldiers instead of love. Each word found a wound that already existed." Nora refused to look away. "You think that makes you different from him?" "No." The answer surprised Kane. Nora continued. "I think it makes me different from both of you." Kane stepped closer. "Help me end him." Adrian forced himself to his feet behind the press. Kane did not see him yet. "You walk out of this city," Kane said. "No veil name, no guards, no organization deciding what you are." Nora looked at the pistol in his hand. "You offered Adrian the same thing. He lacked the courage to take it. You threatened his family. I gave him a choice. No, you gave him fear and called it freedom." Kane's eyes hardened. "You sound like your mother." Nora took another slow step into the emergency light. She needed Kane facing her. She needed his attention away from the steel press. Did you know her? Enough to know she hated your father. She loved him too. That was her weakness. No. Nora watched Adrian move behind Kane. Her weakness was believing dangerous men would change without being forced. Kane saw movement reflected in the metal surface beside him. He turned. Adrian lunged. Kane fired. Adrian struck Nora with his shoulder, throwing her toward the floor as the shot passed over her. They crashed against the concrete. Adrian raised his pistol with his uninjured hand. He fired once. The bullet struck Kane in the chest. Kane staggered backward. His weapon fell. For 1 second, the warehouse became quiet. Kane looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt. Then he smiled. His hand moved toward his ankle. Nora saw the second pistol beneath his trouser leg. Adrian. Adrian fired again. Kane fell beside the river doors. The second weapon slid across the wet floor and stopped near Nora's hand. She did not touch it. Outside, the remaining gunfire began to weaken. Thomas moved toward Kane and kicked both weapons away. He checked for a pulse. There is none. Adrian lowered his pistol. His knees gave way. Nora caught him before he hit the floor. You are heavier than you look. His breath came unevenly. You should have stayed in the command vehicle. You should have stayed on the copyright page. A weak laugh escaped him. Then his face tightened with pain. Nora pressed her hand over the bandage. Stay with me. I am here. This time she believed him. Sebastian entered through the river doors with 4 guards. His eyes found Nora first. He crossed the warehouse faster than she had ever seen him move. He stopped in front of her and looked for blood. Are you hurt? No. He touched her face once, almost uncertainly. The gesture lasted less than a second. Then he looked at Adrian. Sebastian saw Nora holding pressure against his wound. He saw Kane's body beside the doors. He saw the choice waiting in front of him. Several captains entered behind him. The white-haired captain raised his pistol toward Adrian. Sebastian lifted one hand. The man stopped. Sebastian looked at Nora. What happens to him? The room waited. Adrian's eyes remained closed. Nora looked at the man who had lied to her, protected her, used her, chosen her, and nearly died because he refused to complete the betrayal that had brought them together. He gets medical attention. The white-haired captain frowned, and after Nora met Sebastian's eyes. After that, I decide. Sebastian lowered his hand. Call the surgeon. By dawn, the Navy Yard had been emptied of every weapon, vehicle, and body that could connect Sebastian Vale to the shooting. Kane's surviving men abandoned their positions when word spread that he was dead. Some surrendered. Others disappeared into New Jersey before sunrise. Derek Shaw was found alive beside the Western vehicle. He gave Sebastian access to Kane's accounts, warehouses, and remaining captains in exchange for his life. Sebastian did not trust the agreement. Nora did not either. She insisted Derek be handed to federal investigators with evidence tying him to smuggling, extortion, and the attempted abduction. Detective Owen Price was arrested 3 days later. Anonymous files reached a federal task force and a Philadelphia reporter at the same time. Bank transfers sealed warrants. Surveillance records and payments from Russell Kane appeared across the evening news. Publicly, the Navy Yard shooting became a conflict between 2 criminal operations. Privately, every organization along the Delaware understood that the Kane syndicate had ended beside the river it tried to steal. Adrian spent 6 days in a private hospital room. The bullet had missed the bone but damaged muscle and nerves. When he woke after surgery, Nora was not beside him. A Vale guard sat near the door. For the first time, Adrian understood what it meant to wait without control. Nora visited on the 7th day. She entered wearing jeans, a dark coat, and the St. Michael pendant. A second silver emblem hung beside it, the Vale symbol. Adrian looked at the chair near his bed. She remained standing. "How is the arm?" she asked. "Angry. That means the nerves are working. They said I might not regain full strength. You will if you follow instructions. You sound like a nurse." "I am 1 semester away." He looked at the new pendant. "So you stayed. I chose not to run. That is not the same thing." "No." She placed a folder on the table. Inside were names, accounts, and safe house locations Adrian had provided. "You gave them everything?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because Cain built my life out of debts. I am done paying him." Nora studied him. "Sebastian offered you money to leave?" "Yes." "You refused?" "Yes." Why? Adrian looked toward the window. "I am done being bought." "And what do you want?" He returned his gaze to her. "The chance to become someone you do not regret meeting." Nora's expression remained guarded. "That is not something I can give you." "I know. You lied to me." "Yes." "You helped put me in danger." "Yes." "You saved my life." He did not answer. Nora pulled the empty chair closer and sat. "That does not erase the rest." "I know." She looked at his injured shoulder. "But the rest does not erase that either." They sat in silence. It was not forgiveness. It was not punishment. It was the first honest thing between them that did not need a name. In the months that followed, Nora returned to Franklin Medical University. She attended clinical rotations in the morning and Vail meetings at night. Sebastian placed her in the logistics division, the network Cain had tried to take. Some captains resisted, others watched her carefully. Nora learned the routes, the accounts, the warehouses, and the hidden agreements that kept the river moving. She changed what she could. No narcotics passed through medical facilities. Families were not used as leverage. No officer remained on the payroll. No decision involving Nora was made without her knowledge. Sebastian agreed to each condition. Not because he had become a different man overnight, because Nora made refusal more costly than change. At her first formal council meeting, the captain stood around the walnut table. A chair waited at Sebastian's right. No one told Nora where to sit. She placed Helen's letter inside her coat and chose the empty chair. The white-haired captain watched her. "You intend to finish school?" "Yes. And run the river routes, yes. That is not how this family has worked." Nora opened the shipping report. "It is now." Sebastian hid the beginning of a smile behind his hand. Adrian recovered slowly. He joined Nora's security detail only after she agreed. On his first day, she met him outside the university. "You work for me," she said. "I understand. That does not mean I belong to you." "I know. If you lie to me again, there is no second conversation. There will not be a lie." Nora studied him. "You cannot promise that." "No." The answer pleased her more than certainty would have. Adrian continued. "I can promise that if I fail, you will hear it from me first." She nodded. "That is a beginning." Several months after the night at the Navy Yard, Rain returned to Philadelphia. Nora entered the university library carrying a nursing textbook, 2 coffees, and an umbrella that finally worked. The same table waited in the far corner. Adrian sat alone beneath the window. A real textbook lay open in front of him. He looked up when she approached. Nora placed 1 coffee beside his hand. His eyes moved toward the empty chair across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain moved softly against the glass. 2 Vail guards stood near the reference shelves. This time Nora saw them. She gave them a small nod. Then she touched the back of the chair. "Can I sit with you?" Adrian's expression softened. "You never needed permission." Nora sat. She opened her notebook. On the first page, written in dark ink, was a name she had chosen for herself. Nora Whitmore Vail. Adrian looked at it. "Which name are you using now?" She closed the cover. "The one that tells the whole truth." Outside, Philadelphia moved beneath the rain. Inside, Nora sat at the table where one life had ended and another had begun. She was still Helen Whitmore's daughter. She was still a nursing student. She was now Sebastian Vale's recognized heir. And the man across from her no longer watched the exits because he expected her to disappear. He watched her because for the first time in his life someone had learned every dangerous truth about him and chosen the chair anyway.